Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. I know that I've been away for quite some time, so thank you very much for returning. Last year has been a year of a lot of big changes in my life, a lot of ups and downs. So apologies if I haven't been around for some time on YouTube, but I'm glad to be back, and I'm glad that you're back as well. I honestly think that it's been more than a year of COVID by now for a lot of people, but it feels like things are still not back to normal or pre-pandemic times. The situation now, even if there are solutions being proposed and being rolled out, is definitely not the best for a lot of people. I think it's a global tragedy that so many people have lost their lives and their loved ones, and we shouldn't forget about that. We shouldn't let the whole news cycle desensitize us to the reality that we are living through a very, very strange and difficult time. I hope that regardless of what you're currently going through, that watching videos like this could help take your mind off things for a little bit, even if it's just to hear me blabber on about all kinds of random topics. I hope that this video gives you some space to just stop thinking too much about everything, to just let go for a little bit and let your mind rest from all the burdens that you have been carrying for so long in your life. I just hope that regardless of the troubles that you find yourself in, that you are taking care of yourself, that you ultimately know what your worth is, that it is more than just another statistic on someone else's book, that it isn't just another tally in a huge spreadsheet somewhere. I just think that sometimes we tend to treat single lives as something that's so dispensable and disposable. It's just another 200,000 people who have gotten COVID, another 10,000 people who have tragically died from the disease. I think life is just much more than that. And as people who are fortunate enough to still be alive and healthy, we should just remember the fact that we're not just another number. We are a person, and we have like thoughts and feelings and like wishes, aspirations. Even if you're like totally dead inside, you still have a heart that is beating, I hope. So, you're not totally there yet, even if you do feel dead inside, like sometimes I do when I have a very, very hectic day at work. So I just thought that maybe I could also talk about the things that I went through in the past year, what I did when I wasn't making videos or thinking about video ideas and uploading on YouTube. I think this YouTube channel has definitely been something that is a big source of comfort for me. I feel like no matter what happens in my daily life, I can always just come back to my channel. I can put out content that I like, content which can kind of give me a break from what I'm facing in my daily life. But at the same time, I also even though I'm a very small channel and probably people watching this are all my friends or people who know me, in which case I love you guys, I just feel like it's the responsible thing to do to kind of like tell you what I've been up to after so long of not putting out content. I swear I'm still here. I'm still alive. I haven't been turned into a vampire and I'm like posing as an undead version of myself. I'm still very much here. It's just that a lot of different things have happened, and now is the only time when I can find time to like really settle down and think about what I want to talk about and what else I want to put on my channel. In the past year, in May last year in 2020, I graduated from college. I put a video out then about me just reading and recapping a letter that I wrote to myself when I was in my second year of college, I believe. So that was pretty emotional because I went to school in a place that's pretty far from where I live. So a lot of the friends that I made in school are currently not around my immediate area because I moved back home and it's like super far away from where a lot of my friends are, especially because some of my friends like went back to their home countries in a totally different continent. So that's not the best situation to be in personally, because a lot of my closest friends, I met them in college. I didn't really have that many close friends before college from between like the end of my primary school to the beginning of college. So that whole like 6 to 7 years, I don't have a ton of close friends. I don't really have a lot of people that I still am very keen to keep in touch with, just because I feel like outside of our school and our extracurricular experiences, I didn't feel like I was very connected to them. I didn't really feel a sense that I still wanted to keep in touch after graduation and after we have basically exited an environment where we interact out of convenience because we're like in the same class, because we work on the same homework, or because we're in like the same extracurricular clubs. So because of that, I did feel it was quite difficult for me to adjust to life after college without this like very steady and very reliable social support network in my immediate vicinity, because as we all know from a year of being on Zoom and video calls, that text messaging, social media, virtual interaction is definitely not a suitable substitute for human interaction and just forging those connections like in person and having all these like casual conversations from time to time, reading one another's like facial expressions, nonverbal gestures. I think those are all things that can't be replaced by any form of technology for now. So that makes it extra hard for a lot of people during the pandemic. When I was starting out in the few months after I graduated, it was definitely very, very difficult for me. I felt like I was just consumed with anxiety, just concerned about the future, how I would be at work, whether the job that I currently have is suitable for me at this present moment, how things are going to be affected because of COVID, how easy or difficult it might be for me to make new friends while I'm working full time and while I've returned back home to an environment that I felt wasn't the best for me when I was in secondary school and in pre-university. So because of that, I kind of had a pretty rough second half of 2020. I did consider a lot of options, like maybe taking a break from my job, even just quitting my job and figuring out what is it I wanted to do, what kind of lifestyle I wanted to have, and what my goals were in life, whether my current job, my current situation is the best choice for me at the present moment. But I feel like after a lot of thought, I think that I would just kind of like stick with my current job. I would try my best to work out any issues that I might be having from the past, from my expectations about the future. Just try to be resilient and figure out what it was that I wanted to do in the long term, and in the meantime, have a steady job that was good enough for me to make a decent living, that can teach me a lot of different skills that I need for a career, that can really help me build a very strong foundation for what's to come in future. So because of that, I decided to stay in my current role professionally. I decided to kind of seek more help and support about a few of the issues that I was constantly thinking about, whether those were my self-esteem, self-perception, health and fitness, mental well-being. So those were things that I tried to focus on, and which I'm still trying to focus on outside of work. It's not very easy because I do work like pretty long hours on the weekdays. One good thing about my job is that I don't really have to do anything on the weekends. It's obviously good to read, to self-study, to learn more about my current role during the weekends, but it's not really something that's mandatory, not like homework or exams or studying for assignments. So I think that having that little bit of freedom and flexibility in your leisure time or time off is very, very helpful. That was something that I feel like I lacked when I was in school. I felt like I constantly had to be on like 100%, even when I wasn't in class, or even if that class didn't assign me any homework, because I always feel like there's something extra that I should be doing. Like maybe if I didn't have any homework on that day, or if I finished all my homework, should I be like looking to join another like extracurricular club? Should I be looking to like learn like more skills such as coding or drawing or typing 150 words per minute? Yeah, like there's a lot of pressure to perform in all kinds of ways during school, and there was a lot of like unstructured time outside of class that you have to manage by yourself. But then at work it's like a lot more structured, especially because I spend so much time in my work environment, that during the work day I just like do a lot of things that my managers and my colleagues and I are working on, and then in my time off I can like kind of choose to catch up on sleep or go exercising or have a nice meal with my family or my friends. So I think that's like a huge advantage of being at work versus being in school. But definitely the transition between the two is not easy, and I think a lot of people, like, because it was easy for them to graduate and then go to work, maybe because they didn't like school, they didn't like working in an academic setting, or because they really wanted to work and start making money for whatever reasons, to support their family or themselves. Like, I think a lot of people forget about the fact that it's really not easy for young adults to adjust to a professional environment after many years of being in school and not really being taught how to behave in a professional environment. So even if you do internships or part-time jobs, like fundamentally that's still very different from working in a professional role, whether it's like a corporate setting or whether it's in a non-profit organization or a government agency. So I just feel like maybe if we had more ways to introduce people to the reality of working, that would make things a lot easier. But I can't really think of anything specific right now. I guess even if you do internships fundamentally that's very, very different. During my internship, I felt like a tremendous pressure to perform all the time. Like I felt the pressure to like stay super late in the office to just really impress everybody, which isn't sustainable in the long term, because during an internship, which is maybe like 2 months or like sometimes 6 months to a year, that's like not necessarily as long term as taking on a full-time role. In a full-time role, you really have to kind of maintain your health and psychological well-being so that you have the mental fortitude to keep working for like years and years in the job or in the industry. Otherwise, you just like burn out. And if you burn out in your career, I feel like the consequences can be pretty serious. It might be a huge burnout if it's just years and years in the making. And I just feel like versus the school environment, it's maybe people would not be as forgiving towards someone who burns out and really stumbles and struggles in the middle of their career. So definitely it's very important to like just take things at your own pace and not do this very unhealthy kind of comparison between yourself and your colleagues, which is easier said than done, obviously, but I guess it's just something to always keep in mind if you're working. But in an internship, I think the environment is a lot more competitive. It's a lot more cutthroat because it's very short term. The time frame is a lot smaller, and you're constantly being compared by other people to your peers. So because that's the very nature of an internship, they want to pick the best people, and you are obviously there because you want to be picked. So that's a very, very different environment. I feel like it's more of like an exam or a test rather than really a chance to learn more about a company or an industry. So I don't think that it's necessarily the best way of like initiating someone into the work environment. I thought like maybe just some tips on like personal finance, how to rent places, how to like sometimes like even very basic adult stuff. I feel like it would be helpful for me to like really learn about that in a school setting when everyone's learning the same thing, like how do you calculate if your taxes are correctly reported? How do you save for retirement? How do you manage your money? How do you even very basic things, like sometimes I struggle with that. Like if you run into trouble at work with your boss, then what do you do about it? How do you solve these like interpersonal issues at work? Because work is totally different from school. Like in school you have people of like same age and probably same like ideas and beliefs around you, but at work you have like people of all ages, people of all backgrounds. So that's a very different world altogether. So I just feel like if we could kind of really learn more about it in school and not just like very theoretical like homework things or like sports, like how to play frisbee and stuff like that, that would probably be very, very helpful. But then again, there's like so many issues with education. This is just one of them. There's problems with like inequality, access, whether education really enhances a meritocratic society or if it just like reinforces existing divides. Like we don't really know the answers to that, and there's like debate all the time about it between people who are really smart and who have spent all their lives on these issues. So for me, I don't really know the answer, but that's just another one of many considerations that we have to take into account. After I started work and left college, it was difficult. Did I manage to overcome it? I don't think so. I don't think I've overcome all of it yet. Like there are still things that I think about from time to time which are difficult for me. But in general, I think I'm doing better than when I first started working, which was when it was super rough and I just felt very disconnected from everybody around me, even my own family. I just felt like no one really cared about what I was doing or how I was doing or how I felt, which is very isolating and very, very unhealthy. Even if this is a pandemic and there's all this talk about like you should distance yourself from, like, physically distance yourself from people, and you shouldn't go to like all these like meetings and stuff like that. I feel like we've kind of become like a little bit too obsessed with that idea that people should exist in bubbles and deal with their own personal problems because, well, it's a pandemic, everyone's suffering, blah blah blah. Like, that's really not the best way to think about it. I think we all still need some kind of social support, even if it's virtual, even if it's like, only half as good as being able to like go to a new place and meet people who are all interested in pottery or arts or math or science or something. Like, it's honestly just not a good situation to be in, especially if you are already feeling very alone in the world. This just makes it so much worse. And I guess like people are like, well, it's Zoom anyway, why bother to schedule events if it's on Zoom and you can't see the other person except through a screen? Well, I guess the truth is that making an effort, even if it's not as good as the real deal, is still better than making no effort at all, because then people are just going to feel even worse in an already horrible macro environment. So I suppose we should just like kind of make do with what we have. If it makes you a little happier to text people more, then text them more. Like, heck, just do it. Like, text people that you haven't texted before. Like, who cares how they're going to respond? They're probably going to respond because everyone's on their phones and can't really do anything. So like, why not just do it? Like, I guess even for me, like, maybe I should be more open-minded as well. I should just text random people I know from school, ask them like how they're doing, what they're up to, which I honestly don't know for a lot of people that I used to keep in touch with. Like, just say why not and just do it, because if we don't have that kind of attitude, then nothing's really going to happen to help all of us like get through this together. There's many solutions that are being proposed. You have like central banks printing money to support the economy. You have governments trying to like work out the details over unemployment benefits or like social benefits or healthcare or whatever. You get like companies doing like online deals. You get people organizing like Zoom meetups or virtual concerts. So those are all pretty nice initiatives. Pretty nice, at least if you have a decent internet access and you're able to attend these virtual events. But I guess that's still better than just not doing anything and leaving people to their own devices, because when people are left alone, it's not necessarily like a good thing for them. The worst thing that can happen is to be completely isolated and to feel like no one really cares about you because they're too busy caring about other nonsense that's happening in the world. So if that's how you are currently feeling, I just hope to tell you that you're not alone, that even though I may not be someone that knows you personally, you might have no idea who I am. I very much care about you because you're a person, because you're just somebody trying to get by in this totally crazy and demented universe that we just so happen to live in. You're probably some internet stranger. I don't know. You could be someone that I vaguely know. You could be one of my very close friends. I feel like when I'm talking on YouTube, I'm just talking to anybody and everybody out there. That's one of the reasons I would personally go on the internet. Maybe that's one of the reasons why you go on the internet as well. But in any case, a random internet stranger is here talking into a microphone, staring at a computer screen, thinking about all the people that their voice may potentially reach and hoping to talk to each and every one of them through something like this. It's probably one of the more benign and wonderful things about the internet. It's probably one of the original reasons why people wanted internet in the first place, just so you can have someone who's across the world from you who may not be someone that you personally know, just have someone tell you that they care about you. I think that's sometimes all we need. When I go online occasionally, it always makes me feel happier to see that there are like comments or posts or pictures of people just kind of like showing some concern and joy with another human, and I think that's really wholesome and really makes me feel good, even if I generally don't feel great because of all this like crazy stuff that's going on. So if you really feel like you got no one to talk to, I just hope that my voice brings you some form of comfort, for you to know that there is a whole other human being on the other end of this recording, like talking and hoping that you are okay and that you have people in real life who also care about you. Enough has been said, I think, about COVID and about pandemics and about death and sickness. So maybe we could talk about something a little bit more cheerful. I think on the bright side, a lot of people have discovered the joy of keeping a pet. So at least in the area where I live, pet prices have gone up quite a lot because people discovered that having an animal companion in these times gives them a lot of reassurance and makes them feel good about themselves. So I guess like there's not only more people buying pets, but there are also more people trying to adopt animals and giving them a new home and making them feel loved and cared about. So that's always one piece of uplifting news that we can watch out for, that maybe humans have discovered that we not only can form meaningful connections with other humans, but sometimes if there are other like living beings, whether they're like dogs, cats, like pet lizards, I guess. Some people have pet lizards, or like a tank of like pet fish swimming around and just being really happy. Those are always good things to hold on to, like little moments of like joy in life. Not very easy to come by, but very easy to remember if they do make a lasting impact on you. I was just maybe thinking about that because I'm seeing my Stardew Valley video, and you have all these like cute animals on your farm. It's a little exploitative because you're basically like taking their products and making money from it. But I guess it's something that people have been doing for a long time. If you are nice to your animals, if you treat them well, and you ensure that they live in good conditions, then it's fine, I think, to consume animal products like milk, etc., wool. I don't really understand the whole like extremist movement against any animal products. I suppose that some people are against animal products that are produced in a inhumane or cruel way, which I totally understand why people would be against that. But also, like, I am very, very guilty of like eating meat, not really caring about where the meat comes from, whether it's like a factory farm where the animals are mistreated, or eating eggs that are produced by caged hens that never see the light of day in their lives. I am personally very guilty of that. Sometimes I just like eat things and not really put that much thought into where they come from. I'm trying to, but it's really not easy to be mindful of everything. And also, obviously, there's the financial consideration that sometimes if you buy like a cage-free eggs or free range or organic or cruelty-free and stuff like that, it might be a little more expensive. So not everybody can afford that. So if there are like alternatives that are cheap and accessible to the general public, I'm totally in favor of that. But in the meantime, like, it's not great to penalize people for not buying the right kinds of animal products or having certain diets or choosing to eat like certain things or consume certain things over others, like, because not everybody is the same. You don't know what kind of like constraints people are facing in their lives. So always better to be open and not judge as much, I guess, than to just be like super judgmental or aggressive about things like that, because you're not other people. You don't know what kind of lives they're living. But of course there's like certain criteria, I guess, for judgment. Like, for example, everyone has to follow the law or else you face all these consequences. I'm not saying that the law is fair or that the law is right, but realistically, like, the law is there. If you intentionally like rob somebody and there is evidence to prove it, then you have to face the consequences. You have to face a trial. You might have to face a judge or a jury depending on where you live. So yeah, we can't really say that we can't pass judgment on anybody. But I mean, for normal people like us just living our daily lives, like, it's not really necessary to invest effort into judging other people's concerns over things that are quite minor and which have not much bearing on your life or the general well-being of society. Like, people who choose to date someone of the same gender, or people who identify with a different gender or other like form of sexual orientation, like things like that, like it doesn't do you any good or any harm to like pass judgment against people who are just loving whoever they want. So I would say to just let it go. Not everyone thinks the same way. Some people are probably going to criticize me for thinking this way. Some people probably feel like you have no right to talk about these issues. Like, who cares about your opinion anyway? But it's my channel. I'm allowed to say it. So back off if that's what you think. Anyway, back to the game. It looks like my character is harvesting some indoor crops. I feel like there's always this like idea that if you grow stuff in a greenhouse, it doesn't taste as good as when it's like seasonally produced outside. I can't really say much about that because the place where it come from, it doesn't really have like many farms or things like that. So a lot of what I eat is imported. And I'm guessing that most of it is grown like in a greenhouse or grown in a place where they spray like tons of insecticide and like whatever stuff, fertilizer on the crops to make them produce more yield. So I don't really know. Like, also, I don't personally grow any like crops or things like that, at least outside of Stardew Valley in this virtual world. So I don't really know about it, but there's definitely that concern that you feel like it's not natural, like quote unquote natural. Not really, not, I don't really know what people mean by that, but it's just a bit unnatural for crops to be grown indoors. Like, personally, I don't really see a problem with that. I think as long as the plant is growing and it's like healthy, it shouldn't be that much of a problem. Like, of course, there are many issues with farming. You have like big seed organizations, Monsanto and the like, basically screwing over farmers. You have problems like with pesticides polluting the environment, or like some people who are against genetically modified crops, like refusing to consume them or like demonizing people who produce them. Problems with like land, water pollution from stuff that's used in farming. So definitely a lot of problems that are clearly not shown in Stardew Valley. Like in Stardew Valley, you just plop some fertilizer on the earth and then bam, like you get plants instantly, and there's no like water pollution and all that kinds of stuff. But in real life, farming is really not easy. I think it's just like, honestly, one of the industries that we need to like pay a lot more attention to, because it's so fundamental to our survival. And I think like there's not enough being said about like how really like certain farmers work super hard and are screwed over by large businesses, or that there are certain types of food that are produced in some ways that are harmful to the environment. So definitely something that I'm interested in and interested in learning more about. I don't know a ton about it. Like, the most I know about farming is that some farming practices are seriously messed up. And I know that like there is some attempt to produce lab grown meat. So like they would take cells from animal cultures, I guess, and then replicate that in a lab to produce a burger or a chicken nugget or something that is basically animal meat but is indirectly sourced from an animal. Like maybe you just take a small sample of a chicken and then you replicate the cells to make like a chicken breast or something. So I feel like that's definitely something that's really cool and is going to become super big in future. Maybe like 100 years later, people would look at our current generation and think that we are really barbaric for just like slaughtering live animals and eating the meat, when you can get like meat that is made in a lab by scientists who like what they're doing, who don't like have to abuse animals to make enough money to survive, who like maybe just take like a small sample of like skin cells or like do a small biopsy on a chicken or something, and then use that to produce like many different cuts of meat for everybody out there at a much lower price than how meat is currently being farmed and is available to the general public. I think that could be really interesting. Just imagine like sci-fi novels talking about how we are like bloodthirsty people and we just like slit the throats of chickens and cows and just eat their meat and throw out the bones and the organs that we don't want, when people of the future can just go into a lab, take the meat they want, walk away, and keep like cute little hens and like dairy cows as pets, basically, like how we keep like maybe poodles or like German shepherds or something. Yeah, that could be really interesting. Is kind of how we look at medieval people and think about how they're like really cruel for basically burning people alive at the stake, or making them do like those horse-drawn cart torture kind of things, or like putting them in under the guillotine because we hated the rich people or whatever. Yeah, like sometimes when we look at that, we'll be like, oh my gosh, people are so bloodthirsty, they just like watch public executions. So maybe people of the future would also look at us in the same way. Oh my gosh, these people are cruel, they kept chickens in these like little cages and never let them out ever in their lives. We can just produce eggs in our nice, clean, pretty labs, and nothing is being done to harm animals. So who knows, that could be the future of farming. Meanwhile, maybe we'll also see like not just lab grown meat, but also other sources of protein. We've already seen stuff like Impossible Burgers and like meat substitutes, in addition to lab grown meat. So we might see more sources of protein coming out to replace the most like intensive part of farming, like livestock basically. So maybe we'll see stuff like cricket flour becoming more mainstream, like cricket flour being used to make not just cookies but also like bread and staples, and that wouldn't just be like a niche thing or a novelty thing that you see in certain like very very sort of like hippie-ish food stores. You might see it like everywhere. You can just walk into a supermarket and there's like a whole shelf of like cricket flour for you to use in like baking or I don't know, making like croissants or something. Like, you just never know what the future holds. I guess that's one thing that keeps me alive and helps me to get out of bed every morning. But I don't know, like, in the short term, it's really difficult to look past all of the struggles that many people are facing around the world and kind of like look ahead past that to the potential things that we can accomplish as a human civilization. So sometimes we just gotta like imagine and dream and daydream even, because otherwise like it's so difficult to just keep sane and keep like motivated to do the things that you want to do. Like my favorite quote from the Avengers is the reality is often disappointing quote, which I think is like totally true. Like, reality is often disappointing, like, but that's why we have stuff like video games, we have like fiction, we have movies, music, because reality is often disappointing, but you don't necessarily have to live in reality all the time. You play video games, you watch movies, you watch Netflix, you like hang out with friends in a cafe for like 2 or 3 hours, and then the world just stops existing for a little bit then. So even if reality is disappointing, I suppose there are ways to escape it a little bit, or to come to terms with it at least, so that it's not as disappointing as what we make it out to be. On that very cheerful note, I hope you are sound asleep or well rested by the time this video ends.